Alex. Hey, everybody. It's been a few months. It's been a little bit. You missed me? I missed me. I missed me. I don't know. Hey, I am Charles McFall, One EMS, and bringing one in because we're about to go do some big things. One of those things is I am celebrating. Where is my my name? Why is my name not showing up? I don't know why my name's not showing up. I forget what button it is. It's been a minute. It has been a minute since I've had to hit these buttons. So apparently I've turned the names off, and that's all right. But yeah, hey, guess what? We're celebrating 1 year. 1 year of One EMS going on. All right. So I've got something going on here. I'm going to send a special little link out. And let's do this again. Let's see. Let's see. That's what happens when you go live. It goes a little crazy sometimes. Why is it not? I hate that my different emails don't have the right thing connected to them. Right. Anytime you want to go do something, it's like checking off the back of your truck, right? You got to reach for that IV needle and it's just gone. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I can't pull the right email address that I need for this person. I don't know why I keep getting grief on everything. I don't know why it's not going through. And that's very, very frustrating. But that's not what this is all about. Today, we are celebrating 1 year. Why is it doing this? I hate trying to do three things at once. It's so stupid. So stupid. What do you even do here? I don't do anything good. 1 year of One EMS. Emailed to both emails. There we go. Just now. So, Brian Haney and I came together a little over a year ago. It's probably about September, late August, early September last year. Start talking about how we want to use our voice and use media and do what I love to do, which is get in front of people and talk and interview and do digital media and those kind of things, and use that to really affect EMS and affect some change. And we took a shot at going to GEMSA, the Georgia EMS Association conference for providers, educators and providers is what I believe it is. It's the provider conference, basically. And October of last year, we went and we made a huge splash, gave away a lot of T-shirts, and made a lot of contacts and got some interviews done. And leading into that conference, I got to talk to a lot of cool people. And it was a really, really, really cool thing to do. And then, as we have good momentum, the holidays hit, right? And things are a little crazy. And I'm going to bring in a good person here. Hello, Laverne. How you doing this morning?
Bad hair day on camera. Hey.
It's for me, it's always just a hair day. I don't know if it's good or bad. It's just here. So I was just saying, Brian and I started this journey a little over a year ago, and I went to the Georgia EMS conference last year, and I think that's where I met you for the first time. And then the holidays hit, and things got crazy, but we kept pushing through doing things, and then built up towards the spring and did the leadership conference, and it was good. And then craziness has abounded this year as well. I went to EMS World last week just to really try to do some stuff with ambulances and talked to a few people, and that's been tough. And I wanted to talk to you about why we go to conferences, Laverne. What do we look for? What do we want out of it? How could it be better? But before I get into all of that, because that is something I want to talk about, I want to talk about something really, really cool that you pulled off this year, which was the EMS Instructor Symposium.
Oh, okay.
And that was a really, really cool adventure. How'd that work out for you?
It was a lot of hard work. and with a lot of help from my friends. I just realized that not everybody, not every instructor all over the state could afford to go to the conferences all over the country, and then even some of the more further parts of the state where we have those. So I just decided to come up with some categories. I called a few friends of mine who I know are subject matter experts in those categories and asked them, will they be willing to do it? And the answer was resounding yes from everybody, from you, Tom Camplain, Corbett Davis, Jason Grady. Uh,
Yeah.
all I had to do was ask, and they didn't charge anything. And then the vendors were excited to be able to set up their stuff in front of audiences. So they were willing to help out with the food and everything. So I think everybody enjoyed themselves. They got fed physically, mentally, kind of some camaraderie, getting to see people that you haven't had to see in a long time, and you didn't have to travel too far outside of the city to get to it.
Yeah.
And, we got good bathrooms. You
I
got your
thought it was
CEUs
really
by the
cool.
end of the day.
And then you did all the work to make sure the credits went up for the
Yeah.
speakers. At least I don't know if you. I know you're all handing out certificates to everybody.
Oh, I went in and
Yeah,
physically put in everybody's hours.
everybody's hours.
Everybody's hours. So that was about 70 people times 8 hours for most of them. And you have to do them one at a time.
Wow, wow, and you did all that.
Yeah.
Did you have to do that, or did you choose to do that?
No, I could have just gave everybody their certificate and they could have done it themselves, but it wasn't hard.
Yeah,
Once I located everybody's number, because in Georgia everybody has two names. So my name is John
yeah,
Smith, but everybody calls me Bubba. So I signed in as Bubba Smith, and I had to figure out who Bubba Smith was.
yeah, yeah. It was very, very interesting. It was an interesting layout, and one of the things I don't get to present too much at those kind of conferences. Typically, I'm doing more fan based or media based conferences, and the people there. I mean, it's just kind of coming in, come out. They're not getting Con Ed. They're not getting paid to be there. They're just entertained, and so I'm used to kind of that kind of environment. And I walk in, nobody laughed at any of my jokes, not a single one. A few people were watching, but a lot of people were just either looking down at their phones or kicked way back in their chair looking at their phones. I'm like, all right, and then of course my topic is on using digital media to present as an educator, and also to use in business, which is still ahead of its time and still has a lot of resistance. So it was interesting. But I got to meet some cool people from Grady. And apparently Grady started its own podcast for their people inside of Grady. I don't know how that's going right now, right? With Grady being swamped with AMC closing, but it's a thing. It's a thing. But that's not what we're here to talk about necessarily. So, did you, Laverne, get everything you wanted out of that conference?
Yes, yes. It's motivated me to make this a part of my regular repertoire. We did the one this year. We're moving towards doing one for next year. Actually, want to do two a year, and I want to
Nice.
do, and that'll be one before the big conference down south, and then the one after it. Because there's always people who just couldn't get there, and they need 2 or 3 more credit hours, and I want to hit on different topics. So, just talking with my staff and my colleagues, um, ours will be based on subject matter. For example, the next one we're considering doing is going to be more based towards mental health. That mental health resiliency
Okay.
officer class, and kind of get some training to our officers around the state. I'm working on getting one of those up and running so I can invite the leadership to do the officer class first, and then they can have some takeaways and then take that back to their organizations and do just the mental health resiliency courses. Okay.
Nice.
And then also have on the docket pediatric symposium, where I get some of my pediatric specialist friends to come and do some talking, because if anything else, mental health and pediatrics are the two areas where we get the least training in school. All of your training for both of those things, for the most part, is OJT, and that sometimes doesn't always work out well because you don't know how to handle certain situations if you've never seen it. And another thing
Yeah.
that's growing is mental health amongst the pediatric population. So combining those two things together, um, I think would make for some great subject matter on one of these.
I know over the last decade or two that mental health specialists have become a big thing in EMS and in response, and some teams have
Uh-huh.
autism specific autism response teams in their police departments. And Atlanta, I'm not sure about the city or the state of Georgia. Well, we know there's the state of Atlanta and there's the state of Georgia. Hey, wait out,
Instead of
but
being
I'm not sure which governing body did it, but I understand there's a 911 for mental health now.
yeah,
Um,
it's I don't remember the number. It's not 911 though.
no,
It's a national thing actually.
yeah, is it a federal? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
So
federal thing, but when you call it, it brings you to a local entity.
nice,
Kind of
and
like
that
poison
is
control.
needed.
When you call the poison control, it directs you to the local entity, although it's a national number.
Yeah,
It works like that.
I gotcha. And that is very very important to have. And you're talking about how what we get taught about mental health is a chat, not even a chapter, just a few phrases on your own. Like
Uh-huh.
if you're stressing out, talk to somebody. If your partner's stressing out, talk to them. All right, next chapter. And there's nothing really goes into it. And then it's never lean into the visions, right? It's like never confirm the hallucinations or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. It's like watch for these signs and symptoms, and we can't treat it. So basically stay back and be safe and be prepared to
Right.
restrain them.
Unless they get agitated, then you got your little 5 and 5 or whatever they put
Right.
your drug bag at your service.
Yeah.
And it's not always that way. I found that back in my days out in the field, a lot of times it's just a conversation.
Right.
They want a safe, quiet place to talk and
Yeah.
somebody to listen, somebody to feel like they're listening. So,
One person to help give them control of their life, right?
right.
If they can control the conversation, then they can have that little bit, and that helps. And that's not everything, but you're right with the education part of it. I mean, I think it's really cool that you're doing the both of those focuses. And I think, and I've always liked this about certain conferences, and I think it's where I personally shine, is at the end of the conference you have all the speakers come back up and sit and do a round table.
On a
Talk
panel.
about the different topics, talk about and to get that conversational flow and let people ask the Q&A, because as we do, everything's a presentation, right?
Yeah.
Here's some PowerPoint, here's some videos, here's what we're teaching you. And I did get a lot out of the speakers that you had there um, for that. But that conversation, especially in topics like mental health or pediatrics, that
Mhm.
conversational flow is really good. And you just don't see that in EMS. You don't see that style done. It's always a presentation, and hopefully it's not death by PowerPoint, but it is helpful to have stuff on the screens. But if you're not a dynamic speaker like Jason Grady, I mean, he can come up there and all the power can go out, and in the dark, and he can put on an hour-long presentation, and you take notes somehow with your
Right. And
phone,
captivate an audience.
right? You need that other things to help flow
Mhm.
that through. So thinking of that, what is something you want to improve for the other than the topics and the timing? What was something that you would have done differently for your instructor symposium?
Um, just the technology piece. We kind of piecemeal what we have together because we're we don't ha- we have people who are good at technology, but we don't have people like yourself who are like technological experts that could have made the sound and the audio visual a little bit better. The next time I do that, I'm going to have experts come in maybe ahead of time so we can go ahead and get that set up. And then our acoustics, because the place is so big
It is,
and
yeah.
the ceilings are so high, the acoustics are not always great. So just getting the sound and the technology piece better. That way, I think you can captivate the audience more. More vendors, more show and tell, because we're tactile people, so we like to look and see. They did
Yeah.
see the vendors that we did have, but I think I want to expand it to others to come and kind of show their wares and contribute to it, because it's all about what they contribute. Because the department doesn't pay for, they won't pay for things like that. So the vendors end up paying for all of the
Right.
accoutrement that we have, the food, the
Right.
little tchotchkes that you walk away with, so just little things like that. But the technology pieces is the next thing I'm going to work on to make that better.
I thought it went very well, especially for what you had, and again the support you did have, and the different areas of support that you needed. It flowed really well, and
Thank you.
everything went well. Uh, So when we talk about going to conferences, right?
Uh-huh.
You went to the providers last year. I'm sure you've been many years. You went to the leadership one this year, and I just went to a class at EMS World. I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit. But when you go, why do you go to a conference? Why do you go? Well, specifically, why are you about to go to the providers conference this weekend?
Oh, I'm not going.
Oh well, there you go. Well, the show's over. Bye, everybody.
No, the reason. Well, there's a reason that I'm not
Well,
going.
okay, why did you go last year?
I've been going for the last umpteen years to the one that once was in Savannah but now is in Jekyll Island. To get up on the latest and greatest of technology, teaching tools. The one here in Georgia, they go over a lot of state specific stuff because the state changes their rules every
Yeah,
so often. So I like to keep up on those things. It's also kind of a class reunion. You get to see some of your old pals, people you haven't seen in years, students that have become educators now. Like I ran into Brian. Brian was one of my students many, many moons ago, and now he's doing his own thing with you. So it's good to see people that you don't get to see very often. Learn a few things. Few days get away from the office. So even though we're working, um, we also have a little bit of a reprieve because they do have those things at places where you can get some R&R while you're there after you get out of class. So I kind of go for that. Um, but more importantly, just to get the information that's available, and then of course get my required CEUs. Now I'm not going
yeah,
this year because my instructional staff, if all of us go, there's no one there to hold the fort down. So I decided since I go all the time, I'll just let these guys go and do their thing, and then I'll catch it next year because I'm all caught up anyway. So I'll catch mine next year,
gotcha.
and then I have to go to several leadership conferences as well. So I need them in the office or in the classrooms and stuff when I'm gone, and then I'm now on the state EMS consortia, so I'll be a lot busier this year than I've been in years past. So they can go to the fun stuff, and I'll just go sit in the leadership conference.
uh, and that is probably a common answer is continuing education hours, and of course the meeting people. A lot of people won't go, I imagine, because of money. Right, it's $250 for the weekend for the educators. I think it's the same price for the leadership one as well. Maybe not, but it is cost. It can be cost prohibitive when I can go to Georgia Institute of EMS for like 50 or $75 and do all my research and one for the year right there and
Uh-huh.
get it. Well, really for the 2 years, right? It's I got to research this year, and I think I've got all my hours in for both my leadership. I've got to do not my leadership, but instructor. I've got to teach two more classes, which I've already have lined up to teach. Um, and then I've got to. I think I just need a few more hours on either one of those to research them. But I've got all my training done, and that's the thing. You can get it done for cheap and easy. So, what benefit are we going to get out of the conference? Well, for me, like you said, it's seeing people. But that's where I literally was introduced to you there, and now we've done a lot of cool things together.
Yeah.
That's where I've met a number of people. It's where I get to go talk face to face to my vendors and as a company and say, hey, this is what I need. What's going on? Let's just touch base a little bit more. Where I maybe get to meet new vendors and those kind of things. Ultimately, when I go to any conference, look for what I'm there for, which is so. This last year was the first year I went to the educators conference, and uh, the leadership one was so I've been to two leadership one educators. So the leadership one I went to, I was like, no, we paid for the classes. That's what I'm here for. So I made sure I went to every class to take notes and to really participate. I know with most of these, you can go in and just scan your badge and talk to a few people and walk out the other door, and you get credit for it. And we do. And I think that's part of the downside of our educational system in EMS is we don't always take on both sides of it. We don't always take continuing education seriously.
Mhm.
I know there are websites out there that haven't updated their Con Ed in 15 years. It's literally saying click through and go, you know. Um, then if I've seen it 5 times already, why do I care? I need the hours, and I'll do that.
Mhm.
But then I go looking for information that's not always readily available. The first time I went, I wanted to learn about Medicare because I'd just taken over running Trinity EMS and knew nothing about Medicare reimbursements. And they had a Medicare panel, and I went to it, and it was just about this list. And I mean, if I'd known about the list, I probably would have known from the title that it wasn't the class I was looking for. But I didn't. I'm new to all of this, so I went looking for specific information that isn't there. I mean, they do talk about a lot of leadership skills. I think this last one, when Faithful Guardian was presenting and Dr. Rock was presenting, there was a lot of actual useful information on being a leader, and I also had a year under my belt of doing the job,
Mhm.
and so I had a different perspective. But when you go to one of these, besides the obviously the cost factor, which is why you put on the EMS Instructor Symposium and you're doing some other things, do you do you find that you get all that you need besides the credit hours? Do you find like from an educational standpoint, you said you're going to stay up on the latest and greatest, you're going to get updates on things, you're going to learn something new. Do you find that that is working out for you?
Um, Sometimes it does. It all depends on what classes I'm going to. One thing that's usually pretty informative is the state updates. I go for those because those are the ones that can make or break you. If you don't follow the policies and procedures of the state, those make and break you. So I want to stay up on that, take notes on that, get as much information because sometimes what you hear at the conference and then what really happens could be a little, there could be a variance in that. And so if you have that note and that
Yeah.
documentation and this person said this on this date, you have something to back you up when if in the event that something does happen. Um, the other stuff, like I said, certain presenters you get information out of. Even though I'm not a full time active provider anymore, I will listen to Jason Grady all the day long talk about cardiology, and he's at just
Right.
about every conference because he brings a different, fresh perspective every time. I've never heard him say the same thing twice in any of the
Yeah.
lectures that he's ever given. And they're always so dynamic. And you get that from him. And then the leadership conferences, it was Dr. Rock, that was a guy from Washington State last.
Yeah. Yeah. He is the medical director for GMR.
Yeah. So, and he presented some really
Man.
good information on leadership. And that's something that we as leaders don't necessarily get from our service or even our day-to-day experiences. You know,
Yeah.
you get promoted, you get put in a leadership position, they go, here, push you out there, and they go, just like we do medics and EMTs when they finish school, we go, all right, vaya con Dios, and then
Yep.
just, make it do what it do, right? And so listening to people that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, you can take the good, the bad, and the ugly. I may not necessarily do things exactly the way he says do it, but I can take some pointers from him or
Yeah.
anyone else that's been doing this for a while and then kind of custom tailor it to the way that I do things so that I get a better outcome. So going to those, listening to people like that, that's what makes it all worthwhile. I'm blessed in that my
Yeah.
organization usually pays for me to go because to
Yeah.
keep the job that I have to have all these credentials and credits. So it
Mhm.
works to my benefit. But my thing is that everybody does not have that luxury. Um, your average provider on the street does not have that availability and they have to come out of pocket. And
Yeah.
we got to figure out a way to do something different. I know that the face-to-face conferences, I'm not going to say they're a thing of the past, but they're kind of old school dinosaurs to this generation. There's technology. Everybody would rather meet on a Zoom meeting, but there's still that group of people, those of us that are the end of the Gen X's, and then there's still some boomers out there, people somewhere in the middle of those two generations that still like to shake a hand, feel a pulse, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
get the sense of a warm body next to you to have a human conversation and not so much a bot on a screen. And I
Right.
kind of still like that. I don't always want to be bothered with people. Don't get me wrong. I like my quiet time. And I don't mind doing this kind of online thing, but sometimes being in a crowd full of people, like that symposium, kind of felt like a birthday party at first. Ooh, look at all my friends coming to my birthday party! Yay, look at
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I still like that, and I still feel like I get more out of it because I get to feel what that person is saying because they're right there and they're not on the screen talking.
Exactly. And I got a story to tell about how you meet people. Besides, I mean, obviously we met, but the speakers, it's their choice, right? They can mingle or they cannot. Some have to fly in and fly out,
Uh-huh.
but a lot of them actually attend the conference. And you talk about birthday party, right? Well, they do have some parties there, right? It's not the loud banging; it's just more of a barbecue, type of
Uh-huh.
deal. And I ended up sitting at a table with Dr. Rock and his wife, and got to know him better and got to meet him. I know later on that same evening, you and I met up, and then Dr. Rock came up, and y'all were standing by the fire pit, you and him discussing things. And that's something you just don't get in a 1 hour. This is the education I got
Yeah.
to give you. I feel like I'm very good at being real on the screen, but even then, if you're not chatting in the chat room, if you're not actively reaching out, and then if you're not on camera, I don't see your face, I don't know who you are. You can meet, but you don't necessarily meet. So it's almost as important to have the after hours there as
Yeah.
well as the conference. And of course, you can go up and talk to them, ask them more questions. You
Uh-huh.
don't know who you're going to sit next to. And that's a quick story I wanted to tell. The first leadership conference I went to, didn't know anybody in the room at first. I walked in, looked around, didn't see any recognizable faces. Other than David Newton, and we're not buddies. I don't hate him or anything. I have nothing against him, but we're not buddies. I'm not going to go hang out with David. So I just sat down next to these people, and I looked over and they had NGMT on their jacket, which was my competitor. And I'm like, oh, all right, let's see if I can mess with them a little bit. Let's have some fun. And that year was Dr. Patrice Butner Jackson. I was doing this whole day long first day presentation where it was all about interpersonal skills and communication and the stuff that I eat up in leadership. That's the thing that's like, no, this is great. I never expected this at an EMS conference. I thought it was going to be well, you got to file this report this away. And so it was very cool to have that personal touch. And she said, get in groups. Well, I'm a group of one. They were a group of three. We had to have four. So I said, hey, we're competitors. I let them know who I was immediately. It's like, I'm with Trinity and we're competitor. But, I think there's enough room in the sea for everybody. Let's work out and work together. And that's where I met Carol Pence and Spencer Walker and the owner Jennifer. I can't remember her last name. And we did these exercises through the day, and we got to know each other through the day, and we became friendly. And throughout the next year, we ended up talking to each other like, hey, I've got a patient that I can't run in this area. You're in this area. Can I hand them to you? And we just had this professional, friendly conversation and relationship, and just kept up through the year. This past August, so a year and a half after that conference of just talking to them a little bit, meeting with them, making an impression, ultimately Life Care Trinity took over NGMT when NGMT got out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of that conversation and how we and how we worked. And they literally came to the table and said, we know Charles thinks differently. And we know you is Brian and I, and we know both of you do things differently. And we want to know if you can take on this piece and then maybe this piece. And then we just built it up and really quickly because of those conversations. That's the direct line of how that happened. And had I not gone to that leadership conference, who knows, we might have still ended up with some helping over there, or, I may have met you somewhere else, I don't know, but, well, I didn't meet you that one, I met you different, but anyway, you're right. It's that personal thing of, you don't know the next person you're going to meet. And if you're young and coming like your staff, your second, I don't know if he's called second command, but the guy that you lean on a lot, I can't remember his name.
Josh,
Maybe younger guy.
tall, dark hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's my lead paramedic instructor. Uh-huh.
Okay. But they're younger. I mean, they're an eager
Way
generation,
younger.
right? Yeah. Yeah. As in, both younger in the field and just, my career's ahead of me. And I remember when I was that age, I was thinking about my career, but I was never thinking about these conferences. I can say, and I'll ask, do you think at this age, when they go, that they'll advance their career faster because they'll make those wider connections and learn from different perspectives?
I think when they get to that certain mindset of advancing their career, I think right now it's their knowledge base. Everybody wants to be the smartest one around. So they go to get that knowledge to learn new techniques to bring back to the classroom so that they could impart that on their students. Because right now, everybody's biggest concern is it's the numbers game. So the more pass rates I get, the more I can keep my students engaged. I can decrease my attrition rate. And I think
Right.
when you're a younger instructor, especially coming in the game, you want to be the smartest instructor because you want to impart that to your students and make that that's your focus. As they get older, I tell him all the time. I tell him and I tell Marcus. I said, look, the whole purpose in me doing this for you guys, making these opportunities and trying to keep you guys as engaged as I possibly can, giving you everything that you need from a leadership standpoint, as much as I can do, is that I am building up my legacy so that I can walk out the door. And so I need you to start preparing yourself to take my job. That's what that's about. Not take it in a like a hostile takeover type thing, but I
Yeah.
need to be comfortable turning the reins over to you because what I'm doing is I'm building a legacy with this department or wherever I am. It doesn't matter where I am, but I'm building up something, cleaning up the things that weren't necessarily clean, working with the things that were working and continuing that moving forward. But I'm building this so that when you walk in, it won't be easy for you, but it won't be as hard for you as it was for me getting in this and building that legacy and moving forward, coming up with new initiatives. Because if I get the leadership or the powers that be now to see the things that I'm doing and get them to start accepting these initiatives from me, then when you come along and you're working under me, they'll see that, hey, okay, well, if she supports him, then we can support them and keep this thing going. I think you got to get to a certain point in your life at a certain age where you decide to where you're moving into that leadership role and doing that sort of thing.
Right.
And they'll come to that transition eventually. But right now, it's all about getting their students, keeping their student numbers up, and making their students the best that they can be in our industry. And that's kind of one of the things that I think most agencies are in competition with. You know, who has the smarter
Yeah.
EMTs, who has the smarter medics.
Yeah. And see, just from my path and the world I came from and everything I've done in my life, that's where I would be sending them to the leadership conference, to any leadership. As long as it's vetted, it becomes a good one.
Mhm.
Even, I'm talking about, like even outside of EMS,
Yeah.
straight, business leader, but I'm an EMS instructor, I'm a paramedic. It's like, yeah, but there are principles you can learn from those worlds that will absolutely change how you do your presentations or how you have the smartest CMTs or how you talk to them. And I've learned, like with my managers, I don't tell them how to do the job and here's the guidelines. I tell them more the basic principles of why I do what I do and how I get to and why this is important to me.
Uh-huh.
And they take from that and then instill whatever they instill, and then they go forward and conquer.
Right.
And that is, and there's two lines to walk. There is that leadership mentorship line, the ethereal line, if you will, of these aren't answers, these are thought processes. You've
Yes.
got to interpret that yourself. And then there is the educator line of, but these aren't answers. CAB is absolutely how you do CPR now. Go ahead. Oh, they're not, no pulse. Let's do, go right to compressions. Let's go. There's a way to do things. So we have to, I think, merge both worlds. Because if you don't merge them, you get what I felt like I got over at EMS World, which Brian and I went down there specifically to walk that's the largest expo floor I've ever seen in EMS. And I can talk to all the vendors and get real quotes on things and make those contacts and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what we need. What can you do on it? And we hit probably 15, 20 vendors in 45 minutes, as opposed to picking up a phone call and spending 45 minutes each getting sold. But we paid for a class. So they had some pre-con classes, and we knew we weren't going to be there for the whole conference, so we didn't sign up for the regular classes. But we're like, hey, this is one about Leadership 3.0. Let's go find out what we don't know. And what we found was too many thought processes and not enough answers in it. And by thought process, I mean, they would start with a question, and they'd have us do an exercise. And when I was like, okay, there's quotes all around the room. Take 5 minutes, walk around, read the quotes, and then stand next to the one that speaks to you the most. And then we're going to ask you why. And everybody did. It's about 40, 50 of us in the class. And we did it. And we all went around the room talking about why we liked the quotes. And then that was it. There was no, here's how you build on that. Here's why all these quotes are important. Here's a practical thing you can learn, or tell me a practical thing that you can do from that quote. There was none of that. At one point, they said, who's got long wall times? And everybody raised their hands. And the longest one, there was a crew from Canada that came down. They had an interesting story. I'll side note that in a minute. But there's another big fire crew there. And they said their longest wall time they had was 14 hours, Laverne. They left a whole crew on a wall for 14 hours. And all of us had to face, you just had like, wait, what? You need to talk more about that. What did you do? Nothing. They're like, oh my God, that's so crazy. And they moved on. I was like, that's a perfect story of leadership and how, as a leader, what we can do differently. Talk to the hospital, blah, 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 blah. Nothing was there. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, the side note, that was the same conversation the Canadians said over 30 minutes, we start charging the hospital per minute. Now, Canada has the universal version of universal healthcare. So I'm not sure how that works. And that was what everybody's like, wait, how did you get the hospital to do that? How did that work? Because once they started sending bills to the hospital for the hour-long wait, hour and a half, then the hospital's like, well, no, let's get this more in line.
Uh-huh.
No diving in. And that's where I think answers without understanding is just memorization, right? I've gone into way too many of these educational conferences and providers conferences where it's not Jason Grady talking about the heart. And there's like, This is the heart. This is the P wave. And I kind of fall asleep. So I know the P wave. I know this. You're not really refreshing anything that I didn't know. And so I don't have the thought process of how to take this into a bigger mindset or how to understand it more. But then thought processes without practicality is just wasted breath, in all honesty. Have you ever had a class in a conference like that?
Lots of them. Lots of them. Lots of them.
I
Lots.
know that's the answer. That's unfortunately the
Lots.
answer.
I've been to lots of them, or some of them where the person's going on and they're demonstrating and they're caught up in their world and they're droning on about what they're doing. You're like, what in the world is that person talking about? Okay, I'm here. I get credit for it. I'm sitting here being polite. I have no
Right.
idea what's going on. One of, and I think that's, to me, that's the bigger conferences. I know that I have to go to them. Like a credit con is something that's necessary. It's very necessary to learn about accreditation. It's a big conference, but it's a big conference with hundreds and hundreds of people in a room and a panel on a stage and a speaker on a stage, and you get lost in the sauce because
Yeah.
let's be real about it. Everybody who works in EMS has some form of ADD or ADHD or OCD or ODD or whatever, all the,
Right.
all the DDs. We have all of that, right?
We
So
have all the
to put me in a room with a bunch of people on stage talking about subject matter, and then I see a guy walking across the stage with walking across the room, going to the bathroom with a turban,
Yep.
and she then has a really really cute blouse on. And it's like, wow, and then you're in there for 45 minutes with hundreds of people, and there's movement, and God, I wonder what they're having for lunch, and then let me go get some water, and you don't capture my attention. So when they
Right.
have these conferences and they're huge like that, I get like the keynote speaker being a huge forum, right? But I think the conferences should focus more on smaller breakout sessions for people. So let's just say they're doing a session on cardiology. Well, you may have to do two of them because then everybody can get a chance to get there. You have 25 or 100 people in a room. That's kind of, I think, a good square box of about 100 people, and then you could get people's attention and people could focus in on what's going on, and then they can move on to something else and then move on to something else, as opposed to we're sitting in this room for 45 minutes. Wah, wah,
Yeah.
wah. Vendor
If you
break,
would stay, if you
right?
stay,
If you stay. And then vendor break, and then you come back into the room, you leave your stuff there, and wah, 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 wah. And then, all these government agencies and then people with all this education and all these different letters behind their names, and they're saying stuff, and it's like, what's that got to do with me successfully teaching my students how to start this IV on this hard to stick patient? And wow, yeah, okay. Uh,
what are some of the big words Tom loves to use? Not just didactic, but like his whole presentation was like, I don't know what you're talking about, Tom. You use really, really big words.
Tom loves
Yes.
andragogy and the consistency of an individual. I learned about
Right.
andragogy and pedagogy in EMT school because he
Because
was
that's
in
his
school.
thing.
That is his thing. But and then when I sit and look at it and break it apart outside of a big forum, I get it. Adults learn different than children. So how do we teach? Do we teach the adult learner or do we teach the child learner? And then what happens when you have a classroom where you have 17, 18-year-olds and 50-year-olds,
Right.
because
You
it's
don't use words like andragogy and pedagogy. That's what you tell to Tom.
you don't, but me being
But you do, yeah.
well, see, it all depends on the individual because I'm a wordsmither. I love big words. I
There you
love
go.
big
All right.
words. And then I sometimes don't use them, but I love to hear other people use big words, especially when the big words they think the big words go over here, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And I kind of like that, but not everybody's built that way.
Right. Yeah, that. See, and the that Tom does a good job, but you have that. You have the people who like,
Yeah, that's my dude.
here's the high level. This is what we teach, and then you have that medic instructor that just tells war stories the whole time. I find that I'm somewhere in the middle. It's like, now I can talk to you about high concepts,
Right.
but when I tell a story, it's going to be literally linked to what we're talking about on the screen. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to pull it out for you and hand it to you on a platter. Say,
Yeah.
this is what I want you to pull from this story,
Right.
and not just entertain you.
Yeah.
Because
And
I'm a simple kind of man. Leonard Skinner wrote about me, man. I just, it's like, I was like, what is going into your symposium? Like, what is Tom even talking about? And then he gets into his presentations. Oh, okay, yeah, I get it. That's cool. I need to know that stuff.
Right. You need to know
Um,
it.
but yeah, it is a interesting thing. Um, Doug, I will tell you, Laverne, because you've been around in the education part of it a lot more than I have. 'Cause I got in just a few years ago with Tom, as far as teaching myself.
Uh-huh.
Why does everybody have to get up at these conferences and go, I'm Charles McFall, PhD. I went to Harvard and got my PhD for 5 years. And
Because,
it's like, dude, you have the microphone. You're already telling me something I
because,
don't know. You don't have to give me
because
your resume.
because in our industry, you know, a lot of people, we work hard to get what we have. And people, if I go, hi, my name is Laverne Hardwick. I'm a paramedic. People go, want. Now,
And that's
if I'm in the group of
I
my
hate
people,
that.
if I'm in the group of my peers, um, they want to know what else besides, because everybody in the room is a medic. Everybody in the room is a medic. So you're a medic, and what else are you? They want to know that. Now, if I'm
Right.
in John Q. Public and I say that I'm a paramedic, I'll give you a perfect example. I
Okay.
was walking down the hall. I was working at a hospital once, a very prestigious hospital in Atlanta, in Midtown, and of course you know where that is. And I was walking down the hall, and one of the nurses, she's like, "There's Laverne. There's my favorite EMT." I turned around and looked at her. I said, "Where?" She said, "You." I said, "I'm not an EMT." And she goes, "Well, what are you?" "I'm a paramedic." "Well, what's the difference?" "How would you feel if I said, there's my favorite LPN?" "Well, I'm not an LPN. I'm an RN. I went to school longer." Exactly the same. So John Q. Public doesn't necessarily know that there's a difference in our levels. Not that it really matters much, but
Does it though? I mean,
it,
somebody
I
said it
mean,
best recently. We're just medical Uber
I
sometimes.
mean, we're just medical Ubers, but that year and a half of my life, I'll never get it back. And I'll tell you what, I'll never do it again, because I still have some PTSD about paramedic school,
I hear you.
And I tell students they'll have that, but we know that amongst each other. But so now, what is it that at that conference that you're standing up there delivering that lecture that makes you qualified to do it? And that's why we get out and tout our.
Yeah.
That's why some people get out and tout their
Sure.
resume. When I meet people and they ask me what I do, I just go with the I'm a paramedic by trade. "Oh, you drive the ambulance?" "No, I do a little bit different job now. I'm a little older, and I leave that to the younger people." I don't come out with the I'm a program director for the largest fire service in the city in the state of Georgia. I don't do that. I don't do that, because at the end of the day, when I walk into my office and sit down at my computer, I'm tapping on keys like everybody else.
Like everybody else. Yep.
Right. And if one of the instructors is not there, hey, I need you to come help me with this lab. I'm in there teaching them how to do this and teaching them how to do that. So, and then if somebody in the building gets sick, "Miss Laverne," I go hobbling down the hallway, put them on a cardiac monitor. Sometimes I'll ride in with them to the hospital if they need me, but I come in and do the assessment. So
Yeah.
basically, I'm an old gray haired medic. This is what I am. But we got to
I
make
love
each
that.
other feel good about ourselves, right? You
You
know?
know, I get, yeah, and I know I'm cut from a different cloth. I know I'm different. I've always been this way. Just not understanding why certain people do certain things. And I did, I came out with the EMT patch, and somebody called me an ambulance driver, and I'm like, does it look like I have a steering wheel on my shoulder? And I look down, there's a circle. I'm like, well, okay, it does look like I have a steering wheel on my shoulder, and that was just a stupid ego thing of
It's not stupid.
well, I mean, well, for me it was because it was not a I earned this. It was just a challenge for me, and I'm like, I don't care anymore. I mean, I got that way in my career. It's like I had the disco patch, the National Registry disco patch.
Mhm.
Loved it just because it was stupid and glittery and like, woo, look,
Bold.
it's bold, yeah. And because I could technically wear it and not have the boring Georgia patch on that little square state
Uh,
patch, I could wear my disco, but if I'm on a scene and somebody wanted to talk to my partner and thought that they were in charge, okay. Because
okay.
my partner's going to turn to me when they need to and go, "What do I do?" And I'll tell them.
Yeah.
There is no ego there, and that's where I also kind of buck against tradition. And Brian gets on me about this all the time. Like if I had my way, our ambulances would be this nice burnt orange logo color with some browns on it, and because those are the colors that are not just attracted to me. There's some psychology behind them, and he said, but that's not tradition. Tradition's like reds and blues. I'm like, why? Who cares? But he does, and so we go with it. But there's plenty of people in that room. I know at the Atlanta Symposium, the EMS Symposium, when I walked in and did my standard opening, good morning, but never once said, "This is what I've done." Who I was like, "I'm Charles Fallen." Here we go. Some people tuned out. Okay, I understand I want to lose some people, but I kind of tune out, or I'm like, "Where's the remember the old TiVo days? You go bloop bloop." And then skip over 10 seconds. Like, where's my bloop bloop button? It's like, I don't care about everything. I mean, when Dr. Rock came up, he didn't have to say he was the medical director for GMR, the largest ambulance company in the world. The moment he started stepping on stage and engaging the crowd, I'm like, I'm in. Tell me something. You got something for me. And of course, the credentials solidify that. But I guarantee you there's some people in the room going, who is this moron? Oh, he's a doctor? Oh. And like, but why?
Yeah.
We're here for information. For me, this is my personal standpoint. I go to these conferences for multiple reasons, like you said, to meet the people, the connections. But the classes, I go and sit down for information. Tell me either something I didn't know, or just reaffirm what I'm doing is the right thing to do, and maybe tweak it a little bit, or give me some ideas. But to spend that few minutes on this is who I am, this is what I've done, I think it's a waste of my time. And honestly, it's a waste of the time of the person who thinks they have to have it. That's my opinion. Is just because the people who have some of the best credentials won't tell me anything.
Right.
Won't tell me anything. I'm not going to pick on anybody that was at the symposium, but there was a speaker there that they had some interesting things to say, but it just wasn't for me, and nothing they could have said would have changed that. And now I'm sitting there trying to engage because me and only like two other people were engaging with the speakers, and that. So I'm like, okay, as a speaker, I'm going to help you out and ask questions or answer your question back to you, because that's death when you build that presentation on, hey, who all here has long wait times, and nobody engages and raises their hand. Well, that was supposed to be a minute or two of your presentation of engaging with them, and it's not there. I don't know. I mean, I get your point, and that's just. Well, let me ask you one last question before we get out along those lines. With the new generation of educators and leaders coming up, right? I hate using that word because it feels like it's grandkids. It's really not. I call people kids who are new in the business. I mean, I've had 50-year-olds. I'm 45. I've had a 50-year-old come work for me brand new in the business. Call him a kid. Like, I'm older than you are. It's like, not in EMS years, you're not. In EMS years, you're a baby. So, and they enjoy that. It's like, well, that's the first time I've been called a baby in them forever. Like, well, you're welcome. But we do actually have physically younger and just newer to the industry people coming up, as you always should raise up the next people to take your job. Do you think they're going to care as much about the history of the speaker or how the speaker engages?
They want the engagement. You got to come in. You got to come in and hit the ground with these kids nowadays. You got to come in and be in their face and bold and get them to sit up. Once you see that they sit up and they perk up like this, you got them and you got to keep it. They don't care about actually, I think a lot of these kids now kind of don't wish you didn't tout your credentials. They just put it in the obituary, not the obituary. What do you call it? What do you call it? The program. It's kind of like the obituary when you go to a funeral, they have the whole life story of that person. Right.
Yeah.
So put all of my accolades and kudos and education and da da da. Put all that in the obituary, and let me. I know it's a program, so put it in the program of the agenda, whatever. I say obituary because
Yeah. I'm going to take that now. When one EMS does its own conference and you pick up the program, it's going to be called the Conference Obituary. And be like, why? It's like, because you're going to read the life stories and you're going to throw it in the trash and leave it behind. Or you'll take it as a memory. That's why.
Right. Exactly. So put all of the kudos and accolades. She was born, by the river in a little tent, that kind of stuff. Put all that in that, and then let me get up here. And usually I introduce myself. I'm a paramedic. I'm here, program manager here, but I'm a paramedic. And hey, let's go. And you saw that when I introduce people based on not their accolades, but based on my personal relationship with them. Right? Tom is my sensei. That's the guy who it's his fault that you got me in front of you. So if you want to blame somebody, you need to go beat him in the head, not me, because he did this. He did this. I didn't do this. He did this. And everybody there, Corbett, the guy who I ran my first traumatic arrest in the state of Georgia with, right? That would be this guy. And so I like to introduce people that way. And And that way the audience is like, okay, she knows every single one of these people. Because think about it, when we go to these big conferences and we introduce Dr. So-and-so,
Yeah.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the neuroscientist from Grady Hospital, and I've never met him. We both worked at Grady, but I've never met him. I don't know him. I don't know any of these doctors up on the stage. And I probably will never get to know them because once they speak, they get out of here and they
Sure.
don't mingle and take the time to talk to us and get to know them. So um, I like my speakers to be on a personal level. I like, you know, because if people see that they're on a personal level with me, they know that they can be on a personal level with them. Like my medical
Hmm.
director, I had to tell him to, all right, bye, stop talking, stop
Yes,
cussing.
that was so good. He was so much fun. He was the only person who cussed the whole day too. It was the
Right.
greatest
Right. What am
thing.
I doing? What am I going to do? Tell him to shut up? No, doc,
Yeah, right.
Waterman, stop, stop. You know, and so that shows that we're personable. That shows that we're informal. And I think people like a more informal approach because we don't wear suits unless back in the day. Remember Central back in the day, Central EMS, and I
Yeah.
worked for them too, where we had to have starched white shirts and our pants had to be polyester blue, pressed down, seam down the middle. Central had the best dressed staff in the industry, point blank, period. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, because of what they do, their customers is more customer service than the medical service was customer service. So that made sense, right? But conversely, in my decab days over there, and then at care ambulance, and then my Grady days, man, you lucky the shirt's clean because I
Right.
just left work 6 hours ago and I'm coming back, and people again, they don't care so much about that aesthetic of the presentation. They want comfort, they want familiarity, and so if you present these guys that way, if you present your speakers, or even we present ourselves as familiar, as comfortable, as personable, I think
Hmm.
we'll attract more of the younger generation because they need to believe that they can talk to you, know you, trust you, and you're a human being just like they are. You're not a doctor up on a pedestal uh, that they can't reach if they need to call you. They need to know that they can call you and they can
Yeah.
rely on you. Like these knuckleheads call me. I text them 2 o'clock in the morning because if I'm up working in Platinum Planner and I see you messed up, I'm gonna text you 2 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because I know that you're probably on shift anyway. So even if you're not, when you wake up in the morning, you'll see it. And you'll see that
Yeah.
I did it at 2 o'clock
Yeah.
in the morning. It's probably important that you do it, and that's what I think what makes me more personable with people. And I kind of like having that, whether it's a conference or, you know,
Hmm.
she's the program director at Atlanta. She is. Program directors don't act like that. Yes, they do.
Right.
I do.
Yeah. That falsehood, that portrayal of this is how I have to be is like, no. I mean, I've gone a little too far in the personal, and I've had to put walls up and say, no, no, no,
Yes.
you misunderstand. I am personal, but also professional. But there's a psychology behind what you just discussed, and it's I don't know the exact terms. Basically, it's a mirror principle, and that's why people yawn. When you yawn, the brain's triggering. It's like, oh, I need to yawn. They yawn. When you introduce somebody as personal and you're having that relaxed, this is Charles, this is this is how we met, then by association the brain of the attendee is going, this is how I met him, this is what I, and they're getting that relaxed feeling
Uh-huh.
as well. And maybe that's why I resist, because I grew up in the church and everything was stodgy and tight and the starch shirts and so they'd always be, this is Reverend so and so who's had 50,000 church, and it's always this almost demanding overtone to it, and I was like, oh, I'm scared of them. Versus, hey, this is Laverne. This is where, and oh, okay, I can listen. Cool, thanks, Laverne. Thank you for telling me
Yeah.
something today. Um, and there's that psychology. So I guess I won't see you this weekend, but
No.
I am actually, one EMS got to partner with GEMSA this year, and
Oh,
we have a major booth right in the middle because I'm gonna be
dang it,
recording.
Bobby. I oh,
We're
dang it.
always growing and going, man. And we're going to be recording some of the sessions for them. They're trying to do a digital thing this year, and so they got a lot of their presenters to pre-record some Zoom stuff for them and whatever. But there's a few that just didn't have the time or whatever, and so they asked me what I could do, and I said, well, you give me my booth for free, and you said in-kind sponsorship, right? So I'll come and do all the work and video and edit, and you just put my table right there. It's I'm in right as you come out of the main hall is where one EMS will be, and we'll be doing a lot of interviews, and I'll be asking people some of the same questions. Why do you go to the con? What is it you get out of GEMSA? What's something that they could do that would meet your needs better? What are you looking for here? And
I'm sorry I'm gonna miss that now because I'd have a whole lot to say at the GEMSA conference.
I know, I know, and that's what we're gonna do more of. Is I'm gonna ask a lot more questions of people going forward this next year, for year 2 of One EMS, and hopefully it won't be spotty up and down. It's gonna be more of a straight growth. But for year 2 is what are your needs and how do we meet them, and then your tool to the topic that we're talking on, education or field work or conferences and those kind of things. So
Uh-huh.
it's gonna be fun. But I hope to run into Marcus and some of your other people there.
Yeah,
And
I don't know who else going. I know Josh is going because he's running for one of the offices there, so he's
okay,
definitely going to be there.
good luck to
Um,
him.
yeah. I'm still looking for the diversity, man. I'm still looking for the diversity. Um, when I went to a credit card, met a few people there who were on the same page with that, and we kind of met up afterwards and talked about some things. And my experience is not unique. Obviously, it wouldn't be because this is a worldwide thing, but it's just amazing that although it's growing, it's not growing as fast as it needs to. We're spoiled in our metro area with that because we have a lot of diversity in our metro area. But I still, literally, in this day and age, go to conferences, go to meetings, and I'm the only one that looks like me. You know, at one point in life that would have been intimidating. It doesn't bother me anymore because I just stand out. I make myself stand out, and when I walk out the room, everybody knows who I am. So it's that. But I think that if we would come together and kind of let other people into the industry and just, or not even so much let them in, let them know that it exists, because a lot of people don't even know that it exists. And if they knew that it exists, they knew that you too can do this. I think things would start to it would start to change. It would start to shift. But that's another whole podcast.
It is. It is. Yeah, I'm thinking about how the military was back in the '90s. They were suffering on recruitment, and they got a lot of metal bands to do songs or use songs over their high end, high adrenaline commercials, and then all of a sudden recruitment, started going up. We need that. We need that for EMS, but it'd be whatever's relevant to the culture today. Yeah. So
Yeah,
all that being said, I look forward to working with you more at some conferences and the things that we do this year. We'll probably be back together hopefully next month and do our monthly tag in.
yeah,
The podcast, if everybody finds this video on Facebook or wherever you find this video, the podcast is the voice of EMS. You can hear all the recordings that I've done, a lot of them that I've done with Laverne here. And the website's oneems.com. And if you tag me on social media, it's hashtag we are oneems. And if you see this and you are going to be at the conference this weekend in Jekyll Island, October, 21st through whatever, then come see me. You can't miss me. One, I'm 6'7" and loud as everything, but then I have the big 6'7" booth that is loud as everything too. You'll find me.
big green
So
screen.
yeah, big green screen, because then we put up sponsors or other things behind it, so it's all good. Well, thank you, Laverne, for being here today and always adding a new perspective to what we do.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.